Hello and welcome to another edition of Dragonstorm Draws. And today we're going to be looking at underwater effects. And ever since I was a kid, I loved underwater. There's a mystery to it, there's a majesty to it in things like lionfish and manta rays. But there's also, let's face it, something very terrifying about underwater depths. Giant squids, sharks, goblin fish. It's a terrifying sort of place. However, that mixture really was a source of amazing drawings when I was a kid, and I got lots of practice drawing underwater effects. And there were several things which I kind of picked up over time. And the first one is that depth is really important underwater, to show that depth in some way, shape, or form. And one way of doing that is by showing the darkening that happens with distance underwater. So this area here being farther away from us, this is the surface of the water, but as we go down this surface of the water, we're getting farther away. So it's going to be darker farther away than it is closer to us. As a result, we create a sense of depth in our work. And the surface of the water is often choppy, full of currents and other sorts of phenomenon. So we're going to try and just kind of create almost like a diamond sort of shape up there. And these diamonds are by no means regular. They're kind of just all over the place, just to show the choppiness of the water there. And most of my choppiness is going to be closer to us. We can't really see that choppiness farther away. So just these little overlapping kind of diamondy sort of effects. Once I've got some of those in there, I'm also going to darken up some areas around them, just so they stand out a little bit more here and there. And that's just one way of creating this look that the water has been broken up here anyways, by surface tension and waves and all sorts of other things that are going on up there. Just to add some variety as well to our work, which is nice. All right. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have light shining through that darkness. So I want to create some of that darkness first of all. So I'm just going to bring down some of that shading from the top with my finger. You can use a tissue if you're squeamish about getting too messy, but I find that with art, messy is kind of like a natural byproduct. And then once again, use my eraser, I'm just going to create these little light effects that come down. I don't want them to come down too far, otherwise it's only going to penetrate the water so much. So I'm not going to have my darkness here go down too far. Just kind of try to go around the bubbles I've got there as well. Just by having some of that water broken up by light coming down, maybe we'll do 6 or 7 little rays of light kind of shining through, keeping them as straight as possible. This one's a little bit bent out of shape. We'll just straighten that one up a little bit. Maybe we'll put one over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, 5 and 6, let's say. The actual number doesn't matter, as long as you've got some, but not an overabundance of them. We don't want to overdo it. So next, the bubbles themselves. I like to group my bubbles together as if they were kind of coming out in spurts from the gills here of our King Shark. King Shark, by the way, is a DC character who I've loved quite a bit, but I only really got to know him well in the Flash series, season 2, when he first arrived. I was just like, oh my god, they did such a great job on him. But the bubbles are not necessarily perfect circles. They're kind of like oblong shaped. And we've got some darkness here and there in the bubbles because it's dark underwater. I'm not darkening the entire bubble though, because I want some reflections in those bubbles as well. So you've got a really neat effect going on there. We don't actually see water currents underwater, but we do see the effects of them. So down here at the bottom, I'm just going to add in some seaweed, and the seaweed being slightly slanted at an angle will give it that impression that you've got underwater currents in there. So I'm going to draw just a couple stalks here, and I'll have those stalks just have a couple of kelpy like things coming off of them as well. I have a couple of twisting in those currents. And we just do that by having them form like ribbony sort of shapes. And they're going to go back and forth, just creating these kind of twisting effects. I'm just going to darken where the twists happen. Maybe in the distance, maybe in the background here, we'll just have a couple of silhouettes of fish, as if they're far enough away not to be too concerned with the predator we've got here, looking all scary in his majesty that king shark is. So they're in the distance there, and maybe you've got a starfish, here in the foregroundy sort of area, just kind of perched, doing its thing. Some people would just draw an actual star, but the starfish actually do have these 5-pointed leggy sort of things. They are attached to the rocks that they're sitting on. The rocks are rarely nice and flat to allow for a beautiful star shape. Let's make that a bit thicker there. But a couple of signs of life wouldn't hurt, certainly. But I wouldn't put too much in there either. There we go. Give them some little textures here and there. All right. At that point, I'm going to be adding some effects of that light shining down on King Shark's body. So I'm just going to darken the top of his head / dorsal fin there a little bit. And very similar to what we did at the top here, I'm just going to have some net sort of shapes, and they are again really irregular, just to kind of show the light sort of hitting and refracting off of the top of his head. And again, not trying to create perfect net sort of shapes. These nets have been twisted around a little bit, like you see in a basketball game sometimes when the basket's been slam dunked too many times. It's got just that wonderful sort of effect. And we might just loosen up some of those areas. They're not corners, they're more rounded perhaps here and there. And that will just create this wonderful effect of the lights hitting the body and creating almost like a dapple effect like you'd see with leaves that might be causing the light streaming through to shine just a little bit piecemeal onto an object. There we go. And then we're going to get that same effect at the bottom here as well. So like a checkerboard, but really, really inconsistent. Very, very loose. Our lines are not at all straight here. And that creates that wonderful sort of play on light that we've got on the ground there as well. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just adding a bit more detail there, and we'll see how that turns out. All right, and there we have King Shark in his natural environment, teeming with life, but still looking realistic, stark, maybe even a little bit foreboding. Hope you enjoyed that video. Hope maybe you get a chance to try some of these techniques out yourself. And with any luck, you'll find yourself just being more confident when it comes to drawing underwater environments. Hope you have a fantastic day. Please feel free to like the video if you enjoyed it. Share it with friends if you think they're like-minded. And if you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing to the channel.